out of a streetlight beam, banging against the window near Elvia, and then veering away in bursts of blurry light. Branches and leaves covered the windshield of the car, pressed tight like a blanket of black knives. Elvia wasn't to touch knives. Her mother used knives to take the spines off the green cactus pads. They could eat the cactus then, but her father had gotten angry when he saw the cactus today, the cactus her mother was going to cook. He said, "We don't eat cactus. We're Americans." Once Elvia had gotten spines embedded in her finger, and her mother had pulled out the tiny red needles with her teeth. Elvia studied the red circle of burn on her wrist. Her mother had kissed the burn. Elvia licked it herself. Her mother would lick the burn and cool it again when she came back. Where was her mother? She had hit the wall. The atole was hot. It had flown from the dashboard onto Elvia's arm. Where was her mother? The crickets resumed their shrill scraping in the black leaves all around the car. Elvia had awakened in the front seat. Her mother was gone. The keys were gone. Her father had thrown the keys today, and they flew with silver wings and landed on her mother's chest. Indeci nae. Where was her mother? Indeci Barbie. Where was her Barbie? That was what the kids next door kept saying to her through the silver fence. Captain Crunch, Barbie, Dandelion, Stupid Beaner, Mexican, hey, Cricket, shut up, ice cream truck, bye. All those words. Her father had brought her the Barbie, and then he had gone back outside to a blue truck. She loved to steer the blue truck, but tonight, her mother had driven this car for the first time. It had bounced over the humps and made Elvia scream and laugh. It had rocked and pitched like a huge, low-slung animal, raising its back over the speed bumps and then drawing in all its bones with a jarring tremble when they were over, like a wild horsey ride. Where was her mother? The moths bumped harder and harder against the glass, and Elvia peered out the window to see them dancing crazily in the light. They were dipping in and out of darkness. She saw the parking lot, empty and gray, as if she were inside a cloud. "Viko nu'u," her mother always said, pointing up at the clouds. Where was her mother? Elvia was afraid now, and she ducked down into the cave under the dashboard. The well of space was warm, just the right size when she drew her legs to her chest. The floor felt like evening sidewalk against her legs. She twisted her braid into a pillow for her head. She could smell her mother's cinnamon. Something pale bumped the other window, harder and harder, and Elvia looked up. The sky was light. The moths were gone. A pair of white hands pressed like a snail's underside against the glass, around a wide face as bright as the moon. Elvia screamed and screamed when the man opened the door. She screamed while he pulled her out and carried her away. Then she was quiet. She didn't open her mouth for months. "Where is your mother?" the man kept asking. Then a woman asked, "Where is your mother?" Behind her glasses, the woman's eyes were huge and dark as plums. Her hair was a nest of yellow. She touched Elvia's hair and said, "Pretty braid." Elvia pulled away. She said inside her head, "La soup." The woman touched her fingers and said, "Little hands." Elvia put her hands under her legs. She said inside her head, "Ndaha." The woman put her in a car. Elvia waited for her mother. She didn't move from the floor. She didn't speak. She said nothing at the house where the mother had tongue-colored hair and the many children pinched one another over every Cheerio and fought about every hot dog. She never answered at the house where everyone had braids except for the father, who had a silver stripe in his black hair. The braids made her cry. The boys and girls had brown skin. The father talked gently to her. He kept saying, "Habla español," but Elvia couldn't stop crying. She was silent at the house where the woman washed everyone's hair in the bathtub, and Elvia's long black hair swirled around the other's legs like wet roots. She said nothing when the woman cut off her braid the next day. The black braid lay like a glistening snake in the white bottom of the kitchen sink. She remembered her fingers wrapped around her mother's braid while her mother carried her on her hip. She remembered the smell of cinnamon and corn. She touched her bare neck. The woman kept staring in her eyes. The woman threw Elvia's braid in the trash. Elvia looked at the picture of Jesus on the wall. Her father looked like Jesus, and Jesus wore his hair in a ponytail and cut off the sides of his beard so only a yellow paintbrush hung from his chin. If Jesus took off his shirt and cussed a lot and got mad all the time. Every night, in every house, Elvia waited until the woman or man put on the porch light. The moths would gather around the glass-paneled brass lamps or the bare bulbs, and Elvia stayed on the porch as long as she could, watching the blurry white bodies circle and pause and hover, and if she sat still enough, they would brush past her cheek or her shoulder. She was quiet, listening to the hum and quiver of the moths and waiting for her mother to come back from her. That's the part I wrote literally